The iPad notification chimed while Vanessa was upstairs packing her bride tribe suitcase, and that's when I saw the message that changed everything. Can't wait to see you before you go, babe. CA. I stared at those 12 words on her tablet screen, my coffee growing cold in my hand. 35 years old, and I was learning about my wife's affair through a device I'd installed the smart home system on just last month. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd literally wired our house for her betrayal. My name is Eli Warner, though everyone calls me Eli. I install smart home systems for wealthy folks along the New England coast, the kind of people who want their toilets to greet them by name and their refrigerators to judge their dietary choices. It's good money, honest work, and it's given Vanessa and me a comfortable life in this overpriced coastal town where everyone knows everyone else's business. Or so I thought. Eli, have you seen my passport? Vanessa called from upstairs, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she was pretending to be scattered but was actually calculating every move. Check the kitchen drawer, I called back, forwarding the message to my own phone. My fingers moved automatically, muscle memory from years of technical work. Evidence first, emotions later. She appeared in the doorway moments later, looking like she'd stepped out of a vacation brochure. Designer luggage, matching bride tribe tank top, perfectly applied makeup for a 6 a.m. flight. At 31, Vanessa still turned heads, and she knew it. Her auburn hair caught the morning light streaming through our kitchen windows, the same windows I'd installed automated blinds on because she'd complained about having to get up to adjust them manually. You're up early, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Couldn't sleep, kept thinking about your trip. I took a sip of coffee, watching her over the rim. Cancun with the girls, bachelorette party, male strippers, the whole experience. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She laughed, the sound just a little too bright. Don't be jealous, honey. It's just harmless fun before we tie the knot. Oh, I'm not jealous. I set down my mug with deliberate care. Have an amazing time. Don't forget to tip. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or disappointment that I wasn't playing the role of the concerned fiancé. She'd been pushing for reactions lately, little tests I was apparently failing. Britt and Tara should be here any minute, she said, checking her phone. The car to the airport is coming at 7. As if summoned, a horn honked outside. Through the window, I could see Britt's BMW, with Tara already in the passenger seat, both of them wearing matching shirts and oversized sunglasses despite the early hour. Vanessa grabbed her bags and paused at the door. For a moment, I thought she might say something real, something honest. Instead, she gave me a quick kiss on the cheek that felt like a business transaction. I'll call you when we land, she said. I'm sure you will. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and I watched through the window as she loaded her bags into Britt's car. The three of them were laughing about something, their heads together like conspirators, which I was beginning to realize they probably were. My phone buzzed. A text from Ty, my best friend since high school and the closest thing to a brother I'd ever had. Dude, you ready for tonight? Beach house bachelor party is going to be epic. Your mother-in-law actually said we could use the place? I smiled for the first time that morning. Helen Marston, Vanessa's mother, had indeed given us permission to use the family beach house for my bachelor party. What Vanessa didn't know was that Helen had been the one to suggest it. She's as tired of Vanessa's games as I am, Helen had told me just yesterday. That girl needs to learn that actions have consequences. I typed back to Ty. Oh, it's going to be memorable. Trust me on that. Another message popped up, this one from Helen herself. Have fun tonight, dear. I might even stop by to see how the boys are doing. Take lots of pictures. The pieces were falling into place beautifully. If Vanessa wanted to play games, I'd show her how the game was really played. I'd spent years wiring houses, understanding systems, knowing how everything connected. Marriage, it turned out, wasn't that different from a smart home network. You just had to know which buttons to push. I opened my laptop and started making calls. Desmond, my quiet ex-military buddy who occasionally helped with heavy installations. A few other guys from work. Uncle Rick, who owned the Blue Crab Bar and knew every piece of gossip in town before it happened. Rick, it's Eli. Yeah, I know it's early. Listen, you know how Vanessa went to Cancun for her bachelorette party? Well, I'm having my bachelor party at her parents' beach house tonight, and I was wondering if you wanted to swing by. By noon, I had everything arranged. By evening, half the town would know that Eli Warner was throwing a party at the Marston Beach House while his fiancée was living it up in Mexico. In a town where reputation was currency, that kind of information spread faster than a house fire. I spent the day setting up, moving between our house and the beach house, preparing for what Ty was calling the bachelor party of the century. What he didn't know was that this wasn't really about celebrating my last days as a single man. This was about making sure Vanessa understood exactly what she was losing. The beach house sat on a prime piece of oceanfront property, the kind of place that had been in the Marston family for 3 generations. White clapboard siding, wraparound porches, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of the Atlantic. It was the kind of house that said, "Old money" in a whisper rather than a shout. Helen had given me the security codes and a key, along with explicit permission to make myself at home. She'd also made it clear that she expected photographic evidence of the evening's festivities. Vanessa needs to see what she's missing, Helen had said, with a smile that reminded me why I'd always liked my future mother-in-law better than my future wife. As the sun started to set, the guys began arriving. Ty showed up first, carrying a cooler full of craft beer and wearing a grin that suggested he was already 3 drinks ahead of everyone else. Desmond came next, bringing his usual quiet intensity and a bottle of whiskey that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "This place is incredible," Ty said, wandering out onto the deck that overlooked the private beach. "How did you swing this?" "Helen likes me better than she likes her daughter," I said, which was true enough. More guys arrived as the evening progressed. Nothing wild, nothing that would get us arrested or make the local news. Just a group of friends enjoying good food, good drinks, and the kind of ocean view that most people only saw in magazines. The best part was the photos. Helen had been right about that. Every shot captured the luxury, the exclusivity, the fact that I was living it up in a house that cost more than most people made in a decade. The kind of photos that would make a certain someone in Cancun realize that maybe she wasn't the only one who could play games. I posted them strategically throughout the evening. The deck shots went up around 9, just as Vanessa would be getting ready for her night out. The group photo with Helen, who had indeed stopped by as promised, went up around 11. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. The first message was from Britt. "WTF, Eli? You're at V's parents' house?" The second was from Tara. "OMG, is that her mom in the photo with you guys?" But it was the third message that made me smile. A video call from Vanessa herself, her face flushed with what I assumed was a combination of alcohol and rage. I answered from the hot tub, surrounded by friends and with Helen visible in the background, martini in hand. "Eli, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Vanessa's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Having my bachelor party," I said calmly. "You remember? The one you said I should have while you were in Cancun doing whatever it is you're doing." "At my parents' house? With my mother?" "Your mother invited us. She thought it would be nice for the boys to have a proper send-off." I raised my beer to the camera. "Say hi to everyone, honey." The guys waved and called out greetings, clearly enjoying the show. Helen stepped into frame and waggled her fingers at the camera. "Hi, sweetheart. The boys are being perfect gentlemen." I could see Vanessa struggling to process this development. In the background of her video, I caught a glimpse of someone moving quickly out of frame. Someone tall, with dark hair, and the kind of build that suggested regular gym membership. "Say hi to Chase for me," I said casually, and watched Vanessa's face go pale. The video call ended abruptly. My phone buzzed again almost immediately, but this time it wasn't from Vanessa. It was a message from Tara, clearly meant for someone else, but accidentally sent to me instead. A video file. Vanessa and a man I recognized as Chase Alden, trust fund baby and self-proclaimed entrepreneur, in what was obviously a hotel room. They were laughing about something and I could just make out Vanessa's voice. "He has no idea. Poor Eli thinks I'm here with just the girls." Chase's response was muffled, but his smirk was clear enough. I saved the video to my phone and looked up at the stars beginning to appear over the ocean. The night was still young, and I was just getting started. "You wanted real freedom, Vanessa," I murmured to myself. "Let me show you what it costs." The next morning brought a hangover and a dozen missed calls from Vanessa. I ignored them all and focused on the more interesting notifications. Social media was buzzing with photos from both bachelor and bachelorette parties, and the contrast was stark. My feeds showed a classy evening at an exclusive beach house, surrounded by friends and family. Vanessa's feeds, courtesy of Tara's constant posting, showed increasingly messy party scenes, with Vanessa front and center in most of them. By itself, that wouldn't have been damning. But when you put them side by side, a narrative emerged. I was having a sophisticated celebration with the approval of her family. She was getting sloppy in Mexico. The town's gossip network was already picking up on it. Uncle Rick had texted me twice, once to thank me for the best entertainment this town's seen in years, and once to let me know that people were already talking at the morning coffee rush. "Your girl's gonna have some explaining to do when she gets back," his second message read. I was counting on it. Vanessa's flight was scheduled to return that evening, which gave me most of the day to prepare for Phase 2. I spent the morning cleaning up the beach house and returning it to Helen in pristine condition. She was waiting for me when I arrived with the keys. "How did our little experiment go?" she asked, pouring coffee from an antique silver service that probably cost more than my truck. "See for yourself." I showed her my phone, scrolling through the various social media posts from the night before. Helen's smile was sharp enough to perform surgery. "And Vanessa's reaction?" "About what you'd expect, though I think she was more upset about you being there than about me using the house." "Good. That girl has been taking advantage of people's kindness for too long. It's time she learned that actions have consequences." We spent an hour going over the plan for that evening. Helen had agreed to help orchestrate what she called a little reality check for her daughter. The venue would be the Blue Crab, Uncle Rick's bar, which served as the unofficial town hall for anyone who wanted to know what was really happening in our little coastal community. "I'll make sure word gets out that there's a welcome home party for Vanessa," Helen said. "Rick can put together a little gathering, nothing too obvious, just friends and family celebrating her return." "And if she doesn't want to come?" Helen's laugh was like ice cubes clinking in a glass. "Oh, she'll come. Vanessa never could resist being the center of attention." I spent the afternoon at my workshop, ostensibly catching up on work, but really preparing my presentation. The video Tara had accidentally sent me was just the beginning. I'd spent some time that morning going through Vanessa's social media accounts I had the passwords to, since I'd set up all her devices, and found some interesting patterns. Chase Alden appeared in the background of a lot more photos than I'd initially noticed. Always just out of focus, always positioned like he was trying not to be seen, but there nonetheless. A shadow at the edge of her girls' nights out, a figure in the reflection of a restaurant window during her solo shopping trips. How long had this been going on? Months, at least. Maybe longer. My phone rang around 4. Vanessa. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "I'm listening." "Not on the phone. I land at 6. Meet me at the house." "Can't. I've got plans." A pause. "What kind of plans?" "Rick's throwing a little welcome home party for you at the Blue Crab. Your mom set it up. She thought it would be nice for people to celebrate your return. Another pause, longer this time. I don't want a party, Eli. I want to talk to you. We can talk at the party. See you there. I hung up before she could respond. The Blue Crab at 7 p.m. was exactly what I'd hoped for. Rick had outdone himself, putting together what looked like a spontaneous gathering of friends and neighbors, all eager to hear about Vanessa's trip and see the happy couple reunited. The kind of crowd that would remember every detail and share it with anyone who'd listen. Helen was there, of course, holding court at a corner table and making sure everyone knew how much she'd enjoyed having the boys at the beach house. Ty and Desmond flanked the bar, ready to provide moral support and, if necessary, physical backup. A handful of Vanessa's friends and co-workers filled out the crowd, along with the usual collection of local characters who showed up whenever Rick promised free appetizers. Vanessa arrived at 7:30, still carrying her vacation tan and wearing the kind of forced smile that suggested she was already regretting her decision to come. Britt and Tara flanked her like bodyguards, both of them scanning the room with the wariness of people who sensed they were walking into a trap. Eli! Vanessa's voice was bright and artificial as she made her way over to me. This is such a surprise. Your mom thought it would be nice. I gestured toward Helen, who raised her martini glass in acknowledgement. She wanted everyone to hear about your trip. Oh, well, girls' trip. Nothing too exciting. Really? Because Tara's Instagram made it look pretty wild. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the posts from the past few days. Look at all these great shots. You really know how to have a good time. The color drained from Vanessa's face as she realized what I was doing. Around us, the crowd was gathering, drawn by the promise of vacation photos and gossip. Maybe we should do this somewhere more private, she said quietly. Why? These are great photos. Everyone should see them. I handed my phone to Rick, who had positioned himself behind the bar with a perfect view of the room. Rick, can you put these up on the TV? I think people would love to see Vanessa's bachelorette party. What followed was 5 minutes of the most uncomfortable silence I'd ever experienced. Rick, bless him, had connected my phone to the bar's large-screen TV and was scrolling through Tara's posts with the deliberate pace of someone who understood the value of dramatic timing. The photos told a story. Early shots showed the 3 women at the airport, then at their resort, then at various bars and clubs, normal vacation stuff. But as the timeline progressed, the images became more revealing. Vanessa dancing with strangers. Vanessa accepting drinks from men who clearly weren't just being friendly. And then, in the background of what was supposed to be a group selfie, a familiar figure. Chase Alden, raising a beer bottle toward the camera. The room went completely silent. Interesting, Helen said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I didn't realize Chase was in Cancun too. What a coincidence. Vanessa looked like she was going to be sick. Britt and Tara had gone pale, finally understanding that they'd been documenting evidence of their friend's affair without realizing it. It's not what it looks like, Vanessa said, but her voice was barely above a whisper. What does it look like? I asked, genuinely curious to hear her explanation. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Chase was there for business. We just ran into him. In Cancun, at the same resort, multiple times based on these photos. I reclaimed my phone from Rick and scrolled to the video Tara had sent me by mistake. And I suppose this was also just a coincidence? I hit play. Vanessa's voice filled the bar. He has no idea. Poor Eli thinks I'm here with just the girls. Chase's response was clearer on the bar's sound system than it had been on my phone. Guy's an idiot if he can't see what's right in front of him. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Vanessa's sharp intake of breath. I can explain, she started, but I held up a hand. No need. I think everyone understands the situation perfectly. Vanessa looked around the room, taking in the faces of friends, family, and neighbors, all of whom were staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to disgust to barely concealed glee. In a small town, this was the kind of scandal that people would be talking about for years. She turned and ran for the door. I didn't follow her. Instead, I ordered another beer and accepted the sympathetic pats on the back from people who were already composing the text messages they'd send as soon as they left the bar. "You handled that well," Helen said, appearing at my elbow. "Though I suspect this isn't over." She was right, of course. This was just the opening move, but it was a good one. By morning, everyone in town would know that Vanessa Warner had been caught cheating on her fiancé with Chase Alden and that she'd been humiliated in front of half the community. In a place where reputation was everything, that was just the beginning of her problems. My phone buzzed with a text from Ty. "Dude, that was brutal. You okay?" I typed back, "Just getting started." Because I was. Vanessa wanted to play games. She was about to learn that I'd been studying the rules a lot longer than she had. Chase Alden made his first mistake by coming back to town. I was having breakfast at Murphy's Diner the next morning when he walked in, apparently unaware that he'd become the most talked-about person in a 50-mile radius overnight. The diner went quiet as he took a seat at the counter, the kind of silence that suggested everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. I finished my eggs and coffee, left money on the table, and walked over to where he was sitting. "Chase." I kept my voice conversational, friendly even. "Didn't expect to see you back so soon." He turned, and I could see the exact moment he realized who was talking to him. His face went through several expressions in quick succession: surprise, guilt, fear, and finally a kind of desperate bravado. "Eli. Hey man. Look, about last night." "What about it?" "That whole thing at the bar. It's not what you think." I sat down on the stool next to him, close enough that our conversation would remain private, but visible enough that everyone in the diner could see we were talking. "What do I think, Chase? I mean, Vanessa and I were just friends. We ran into each other in Cancun, that's all. Pure coincidence." "Interesting theory." I signaled the waitress for another coffee. "So, when you said I was an idiot for not seeing what was right in front of me, you were talking about friendship?" His face flushed red. That was taken out of context. "Was it?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled to another video, one I hadn't shared the night before. Tara had been busy with her camera in Mexico, and she'd accidentally captured more than she'd intended. Because I've got about 10 minutes of context right here, if you'd like to review it. Chase glanced at my phone screen and went pale. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" I pocketed the phone and picked up my fresh coffee. "The question is, what are we going to do about this situation? Look, man, I never meant for it to happen. Vanessa and I, we just connected, you know? She was unhappy and I was there and..." "How long?" "What?" "How long have you been connecting with my fiancé?" Chase stared into his coffee cup like it might contain answers. "A few months. Maybe 6. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of coming home to a woman who was pretending to love me while she was planning her exit strategy with a trust fund baby who'd never worked a real day in his life." "I appreciate your honesty," I said, and I meant it. "Now let me be honest with you." I leaned closer, dropping my voice to just above a whisper. "You've made a mistake, Chase. A big one. Not just sleeping with another man's fiancé, though that's bad enough. Your mistake was doing it in my town, with my friends and family watching and thinking you could just walk away without consequences. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you." I stood up and dropped a $5 bill on the counter. "See, you're used to buying your way out of problems. Daddy's money, family connections, all of that. But this isn't that kind of problem. This is the kind of problem that follows you around, that shows up in your social media feeds and your business meetings and your family gatherings, the kind of problem that makes people look at you differently." I paused at the door and looked back at him. Welcome to small-town justice, Chase. Hope you enjoy your stay. The next few days were a masterclass in social warfare. I didn't have to do much. The town's gossip network had taken on a life of its own, with new details and theories emerging daily. Vanessa had apparently locked herself in our house and wasn't taking calls from anyone except her lawyer. Chase was staying at the Ocean View Motel, probably the first time in his life he'd slept somewhere that didn't have room service. Helen kept me updated on the family drama. Vanessa called, crying and begging for forgiveness, she reported over lunch at the country club. I told her that forgiveness was between her and God, but that her trust fund was between her and me. You cut her off? Temporarily suspended, Helen corrected, until she can demonstrate that she's learned something from this experience, which, knowing my daughter, could take quite some time. The professional consequences were starting to pile up too. Vanessa worked in human resources for a mid-sized marketing firm, the kind of job that required a spotless reputation and unquestioned integrity. Word was already spreading through her professional network, helped along by social media posts, and the fact that Tara had tagged Vanessa's company in several of her Cancun photos. I was working on a smart home installation across town when Ty called with an update. Dude, you need to see this, he said. Chase tried to go to the Blue Crab last night. Tried? Rick refused to serve him. Said the bar had a policy against serving people who weren't welcome in the community. Chase made a scene, started yelling about discrimination and lawsuits. Rick just pointed to the sign behind the bar. I knew the sign Ty was talking about. It had been there for as long as Rick had owned the place. We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone for any reason. It gets better, Ty continued. This morning, Chase's BMW had 4 flat tires, and someone had written cheater in the dust on his windshield. Any idea who? Nope. Could have been anyone. Lot of people in this town think highly of you, Eli. That afternoon, I got a call from Vanessa. Her first direct communication since the scene at the Blue Crab. We need to talk, she said. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. I'm listening. Not on the phone. Can you come home? I am home. I'm at the beach house. A pause. What do you mean? Your mother offered to let me stay here while we sort things out. Seemed like the right thing to do, given the circumstances. Eli, please. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through our problems. What problems, Vanessa? I thought we were happy. I thought we were planning a wedding. Turns out you were planning something else entirely. It was a mistake. Chase doesn't mean anything to me. Does that make it better or worse, that you threw away our relationship for someone who doesn't mean anything to you? Silence. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to pack your things and find somewhere else to stay. The house is in both our names, but I think we can agree that the situation is a little too complicated for us to be roommates right now. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, Vanessa. Maybe Chase can help you figure that out. I hung up and poured myself a glass of the expensive whiskey Helen kept in the beach house bar. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the ocean stretching to the horizon, endless and indifferent. It was peaceful here, quiet in a way our house had never been. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I assumed it was from Chase, though it could have been from Vanessa. Either way, they were right. This wasn't over. But they were wrong if they thought that was a threat. As far as I was concerned, it was a promise. The next morning brought news that Chase had checked out of the Ocean View Motel and left town, at least temporarily. Vanessa had apparently gone with him, based on reports from neighbors who'd seen her loading suitcases into his damaged BMW. Running away together, Helen observed when she stopped by the beach house with groceries and gossip. How romantic, and how predictable. You think they'll be back? Oh, they'll be back. Chase has business interests here, and Vanessa's too proud to stay gone for long. She'll want to try to salvage her reputation, convince people that this was all a misunderstanding. Helen was right, of course. 3 days later, Vanessa returned alone, driving a rental car and wearing the kind of determined expression that suggested she had a plan. She called that evening. "I'm back." I noticed. "I want to explain what really happened. I'm pretty clear on what happened, but go ahead. Can we meet somewhere neutral? Somewhere we can talk without an audience?" I thought about it. The smart play would be to keep the pressure on, maintain the advantage I'd built over the past week. But I was curious about what she thought she could say that would change anything. "Murphy's Diner, tomorrow morning at 8. "Thank you, Eli. I know I don't deserve it, but thank you." After she hung up, I sat on the beach house deck and watched the sunset paint the ocean in shades of orange and red. Tomorrow would bring another confrontation, another chance to see how far Vanessa was willing to go to try to save herself. I was looking forward to it. Vanessa was already waiting when I arrived at Murphy's Diner the next morning, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a coffee cup like it was an anchor. She'd lost weight in the past week, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Thank you for coming," she said, as I slid into the seat across from her. "You said you wanted to explain. I'm listening." She took a deep breath and launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. The affair with Chase had been a mistake, a moment of weakness during a difficult time in our relationship. She'd been feeling neglected, taken for granted, and Chase had been there offering attention and excitement. It didn't mean anything. It was over now, and she was willing to do whatever it took to earn back my trust. I let her talk, occasionally nodding or making non-committal sounds. When she finished, I sat back and studied her face. "That's a good speech," I said finally. "Very convincing. How long did you practice it?" "Eli, I'm being serious." "So am I. You've always been good at saying what people want to hear, Vanessa. It's one of your talents. But I'm curious about something." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a screenshot I'd taken from Chase's social media account. "This is from 4 months ago, a photo from that new restaurant downtown, the one with the private dining rooms. You told me you were having dinner with Britt that night." Vanessa glanced at the photo, and her face went pale. In the background, barely visible in the reflection of a window, were 2 figures at a corner table. The image was blurry, but the woman's auburn hair was unmistakable. "That doesn't prove anything," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're right. By itself, it's just a coincidence." I scrolled to another screenshot. "But this is from 6 weeks later. That charity gala you said you couldn't attend because you were sick, except here you are in the background of someone else's photo, dancing with a man who's definitely not me." I showed her 3 more photos, each one documenting a lie, each one proving that her affair with Chase had been going on much longer than she'd admitted. "How long have you been planning to leave me, Vanessa?" "I wasn't planning to leave you." "Really?" "Because I also found this." I showed her a screenshot of an apartment listing, saved to her browser history 3 months ago. 1-bedroom luxury condo downtown. You looked at it 17 times? She stared at the screen, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was guessing. "I was just looking," she said finally. "I never actually—" "You put down a deposit," I interrupted. "I called the leasing office. You put down a deposit and told them you'd be ready to move in after the first of the year, right around the time our lease is up." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Around us, the normal sounds of the diner continued. Conversations, clinking dishes, the hiss of the coffee machine, but our corner booth felt isolated from all of it. "So, here's what I think really happened," I said, keeping my voice conversational. "You met Chase 6 months ago, maybe longer. He's got money, he's got connections, and he represents a different kind of life than the one you have with me. You started an affair, but you're too smart to just walk away from a stable relationship without a backup plan." I leaned forward. "So, You decided to have your cake and eat it too. Keep me around for security while you explored your options with Chase. The wedding was supposed to be your exit strategy, wasn't it? A big celebration, lots of gifts and cash, and then a convenient divorce a few months later when you realized we weren't compatible. Vanessa's hands were shaking now. That's not... The Cancun trip was supposed to be your final audition with Chase, see if he was really ready to commit to something serious, except you got sloppy, and Tara documented the whole thing without realizing what she was doing. I sat back and signaled the waitress for more coffee. Am I close? Vanessa didn't answer, but she didn't need to. The look on her face told me everything I needed to know. The thing is, I continued, I might have been willing to work with you if you'd just been honest. If you'd come to me 6 months ago and said you were unhappy, that you wanted something different, we could have ended things like adults. But you didn't do that. You decided to lie and cheat and steal, and now you're surprised that there are consequences. What do you want, Eli? I want you to understand something. This isn't about revenge, though I'll admit there's some satisfaction in watching your carefully constructed plans fall apart. This is about justice. You made choices, and now you get to live with the results. I pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. Divorce papers? I'm not asking for alimony or half your trust fund or anything like that. I just want out, clean and simple. Vanessa opened the envelope with trembling fingers and scanned the documents. This gives you the house. The house we bought together with money I earned while you were planning your escape? Yeah, I think that's fair. And my car? Is in your name. Keep it. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been genuine remorse. I really did love you, Eli. At the beginning. I know you did. That's what makes this so sad. I stood up and dropped money on the table for both our meals. You've got 48 hours to get your things out of the house. After that, I'll have the locks changed. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, Vanessa. Maybe Chase can help you figure that out. Oh, wait. I heard he went back to Boston. Something about his family being disappointed in his recent choices. I was halfway to the door when she called after me. This isn't over, Eli. I turned back to look at her one last time. She was still sitting in the corner booth, surrounded by the wreckage of her plans, holding divorce papers that would make our separation official. Yes, it is, I said. You just haven't figured that out yet. The next 48 hours passed quietly. Vanessa came by the house once, with a moving truck and 2 friends I didn't recognize, and packed up her belongings without trying to contact me. I stayed at the beach house during the process, giving her space to collect her things and say goodbye to the life she'd thrown away. Helen stopped by that evening with a bottle of champagne and an update on the family drama. Vanessa tried to call me this morning, she reported, as we sat on the deck watching the sunset. Wanted to know if I'd reconsider the trust fund situation. And I told her that trust was something that had to be earned and that she'd have to start from zero like everyone else. Helen raised her glass in a toast. To new beginnings. To justice, I corrected, clinking my glass against hers. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Vanessa didn't contest any of the terms, probably because her lawyer had advised her that fighting would only make the situation worse. By then, the gossip had died down to a manageable level, and people were starting to treat me with the kind of respectful sympathy reserved for someone who'd handled a bad situation with dignity. Chase never came back to town. Word was that his family had relocated him to their West Coast operations, far away from the scene of his indiscretions. Vanessa took a job in Portland, a step down from her previous position, but probably the best she could do, given her tarnished reputation. I kept the house and went back to my work, installing smart home systems for people who wanted their lives to be a little more convenient, a little more connected. It was good work, honest work, and it paid well enough to support the lifestyle I'd built. The only difference was that now I was living it alone, which turned out to be exactly what I wanted. 6 months after the divorce was final, I was having dinner at the Blue Crab when Rick mentioned that he'd heard from a friend in Portland that Vanessa was engaged again, this time to a lawyer she'd met through work. "Fast worker," Rick observed, refilling my beer. "Always was," I agreed. I didn't feel sorry for her new fiancé. If he was smart, he'd do his homework before walking down the aisle. If he wasn't, well, some lessons could only be learned the hard way. As for me, I was content. I had my work, my friends, and a beach house that Helen had decided to let me rent indefinitely at a rate that was generous even by family standards. I had my reputation intact and my conscience clear. Most importantly, I had the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. Not the kind of justice you see in movies, with dramatic confrontations and violent revenge. Real justice, the kind that comes from understanding that actions have consequences and that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the results of their own choices. Vanessa had wanted freedom. She'd gotten it, along with everything that came with it. The loneliness, the broken trust, the knowledge that she'd thrown away something real for something that turned out to be an illusion. I raised my beer in a private toast to the lesson she'd learned, and to the man I'd become in the process of teaching it to her. The ocean stretched out beyond the windows of the Blue Crab, endless and indifferent, and I found that view perfectly suited my mood.